My father was marrying a woman only 1 year older than me, and that wasn't even the most shocking part. I'm Emma Davis, 32, and what happened at my dad's wedding left 200 guests speechless when a lawyer walked in with evidence that made the bride collapse in her designer gown. Before I share this incredible story of family betrayal, legal justice, and the moment my stepmother's $2 million secret was exposed, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy this story. Where are you watching from? Drop your location and time below. I love connecting with viewers who understand that sometimes protecting family means standing up to family. 3 months earlier, Dad had called with the wonderful news about Madeline Foster, a woman who would systematically try to erase my late mother's memory and steal everything our family had built. 3 months ago, my father called me with news that shattered our already fragile family dynamic. "Emma, I have something wonderful to tell you," he said, his voice carrying an excitement I hadn't heard since before Mom's death. "I'm getting married." My dad, Robert Davis, is 58 years old and owns one of the most successful real estate firms in Connecticut. Since losing Mom to cancer 3 years ago, he'd thrown himself into work, barely surfacing for family dinners or holidays. So when he mentioned dating someone, I was cautiously optimistic. Maybe this would help him heal. Then I met Madeline Foster. She was 33, just 1 year older than me, 25 years younger than Dad. Stunning, I'll give her that. Platinum blonde hair, designer everything, and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. But what disturbed me most wasn't the age gap. It was how systematically she began erasing my mother's presence from our family home. First, it was small things. Mom's favorite orchids disappeared from the sunroom. "They attract bugs," Madeline explained sweetly. Then Mom's book collection vanished from the library. "We're modernizing," she said. The family photos came down next. "Robert needs to move forward, not live in the past." Dad seemed oblivious, lost in what my brother James called the fog. Every concern we raised was met with the same response. "Madeline makes me happy. Can't you be happy for me?" But here's what really set off my alarm bells. Something I discovered by accident when Madeline left her phone unlocked at dinner. A text popped up from someone named Derek. "How long until the old man changes the will?" Her response? "Working on it. His kids are the only obstacle." But what I discovered about her first marriage would change everything. Madeline's manipulation was masterful, I'll give her that. She didn't attack us directly. That would have been too obvious. Instead, she positioned herself as Dad's protector, the caring younger wife shielding him from his demanding children. "Your father needs peace at his age, Emma," she'd say with practiced concern. "All this stress about family obligations? It's not good for his heart." There was no heart condition. Dad was healthier than men half his age, but suddenly our weekly family dinners were canceled. "Doctor's orders," Madeline would text. "He needs rest." My brother James, 35, and typically Switzerland in family conflicts, started noticing it too. His calls to Dad went unanswered. When he'd drop by the house, Madeline would meet him at the door. "Robert's napping." "Robert's in a meeting." Always Robert now, never Dad. She controlled his calendar like a military operation. Golf with his buddies? "Cancelled. We have couples yoga." His monthly poker game? That smoke-filled room isn't healthy. Even his standing lunch with his sister Patricia was mysteriously double-booked every week. But the financial control was the most alarming. Dad's longtime accountant, who'd worked with our family for 20 years, was suddenly replaced by Madeline's friend, who was more modern in his approach. The family financial advisor? Also replaced. The pattern was clear. Anyone who knew our family's history was being systematically removed. "She's isolating him," James said during one of our emergency coffee meetings. "It's textbook." "But what can we do?" I asked. "Every time we bring it up, we look like the jealous children who can't accept Dad moving on." James stirred his coffee thoughtfully. "Maybe we need to know more about who Madeline Foster really is." That decision would lead us down a path none of us expected. The real wake-up call came when Dad's longtime attorney Harold Morrison called me directly, something he'd never done before. "Emma, I can't discuss specifics due to client confidentiality," he said carefully, "but I want you to know that your father has scheduled an appointment to make significant changes to his estate planning. I've advised him to include you and James in these discussions, but—" He paused. "Mrs. Foster feels it would be too stressful for him." My blood ran cold. Dad's estate wasn't just about money, though the real estate firm was worth over $50 million. It was about Mom's legacy, too. Before she died, she and Dad had established the Catherine Davis Memorial Foundation, a charity providing cancer support services. It ran on dividends from the family trust. That evening, I overheard Madeline on a speakerphone call with her lawyer while I was visiting Dad. She didn't know I was in the hallway. "A wife should inherit everything, don't you think?" she said. "Especially when the children are already successful adults. They don't need handouts." Handouts? My mother's family had built that company alongside my father for 30 years. But it got worse. The next week, Dad mentioned casually over dinner that he was thinking of dissolving Mom's foundation. "Madeline thinks we should focus on our future, not the past," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Dad, that foundation helps hundreds of families every year," I protested. Madeline touched his arm gently. "Robert, remember what we discussed about emotional manipulation?" The way my father looked at me then, like I was some stranger trying to take advantage of him, broke my heart. But it also lit a fire in me. Harold Morrison suddenly became unreachable after that meeting. His secretary said he was on an unexpected sabbatical. The timing wasn't coincidental. The isolation was killing me slowly. Dad, who used to call me every morning just to say hello, now took days to return my texts. When he did respond, the messages felt scripted, formal. "Emma, I'm well. Hope you are too. Robert." Robert. Not Dad. Not even love Dad. Just Robert. "He's pulling away from everyone," Aunt Patricia told me over lunch. "Last week was his 58th birthday. Madeline threw a party, didn't invite any family, said we'd make him anxious." The breaking point came when I drove to the house unannounced, desperate to see my father. Madeline answered the door in designer loungewear, her expression shifting from surprise to calculation in seconds. "Emma, you should call before coming over." "This is still my childhood home," I said quietly. "Was," she corrected. "Things change. Your father needs boundaries." Behind her, I saw Dad in his study. He looked up, and for a moment, I saw the father I knew, warm, loving. Then Madeline called out, "Robert, you have that conference call, remember?" He looked confused but nodded, disappearing upstairs. There was no conference call. We both knew it. That night, I made a decision. I called Margaret Smith, my mother's best friend, and one of the most respected family lawyers in the state. Margaret had been at every birthday, every graduation, every milestone of my life. "Aunt Margaret," I said, using my childhood name for her, "I need your help. Something's very wrong with Dad's new fiancée." "Emma, darling," she said, her voice immediately concerned, "tell me everything." After I explained the situation, there was a long pause. Then Margaret said something that changed everything. "The name Madeline Foster sounds familiar. Give me a few days to check something." That's when I made the call that would change everything. If you've ever dealt with toxic family dynamics, you know how isolating it feels when someone turns your own parent against you. But sometimes, the truth has a way of surfacing at the perfect moment. Hit that like button if you believe in karma, and subscribe for more stories about standing up for what's right. Your support means everything. Now, let me tell you what Margaret discovered about Madeline's past. Margaret called me back 3 days later, and her voice had an edge I'd never heard before. "Emma, you need to come to my office immediately and bring James." When we arrived, Margaret had a folder on her desk that would change everything. She looked at us both seriously before speaking. 5 years ago, I represented an elderly woman named Eleanor Foster in a financial abuse case. Foster, that was her son Thomas's last name. His wife at the time was named Madeline. My heart started racing. The same Madeline. Margaret pulled out a photograph from the case file. It was her. Younger, different hair color, but definitely Madeline. Eleanor had early-stage Alzheimer's, Margaret continued. Her daughter-in-law, Madeline, convinced Thomas to give her power of attorney over Eleanor's accounts, supposedly to help manage her care. Instead, Madeline forged Thomas's signature on property transfer documents, trying to move $3 million worth of Eleanor's real estate into her own name. James leaned forward. She forged signatures? Multiple times. We caught her because she got greedy, tried to sell one of the properties before the divorce was even filed. The buyer's attorney noticed discrepancies in the paperwork and alerted us. I felt sick. What happened to her? She agreed to return everything to avoid criminal charges. Thomas divorced her immediately. Eleanor's family got a restraining order. Margaret paused. Emma, your father needs to know this before the wedding. But we need more than my word. Madeline will claim it's a different person, mistaken identity, anything. So what do we do? Margaret smiled grimly. We need the court documents. Lucky for you, I know exactly where to find them. And Emma, I think I should attend your father's wedding as your +1. I tried calling Dad 17 times that week. Finally, on the 18th attempt, someone picked up, but it wasn't him. Robert's phone, Madeline answered sweetly. I need to speak with my father. He's resting, doctor's orders. Which doctor? I pressed. I'd like to call and check on his condition. A pause. You don't trust me? I don't know you, I said calmly. And you're controlling access to my father. Her voice turned cold. I'm protecting him from stress, from children who only call when they want something. I call because I love him. Love? She laughed. Where was that love when he was grieving alone for 3 years? The accusation stung because it held a grain of truth. We had all retreated into our own grief after Mom died. But that didn't give her the right to steal him from us now. I'll be at the wedding, I said firmly. You're not on the list. I'm his daughter. That doesn't mean you're welcome. We'll see about that. Emma, her voice turned artificially sweet again. I'm trying to be patient here. Your father is happy. Finally happy. Why can't you just accept that? Because happy people don't cut off their families. He's not cutting anyone off. He's establishing healthy boundaries. Boundaries you created. Boundaries he needs, she snapped, then caught herself. The wedding is intimate, family only. I am family. No, she said quietly. You're a reminder of his past, and Robert is focused on his future now. The line went dead. When I tried calling back, the number was blocked. James texted me an hour later. Just got disinvited from the wedding via email from Dad's account, but I doubt he wrote it. See you at the wedding, Madeline, I texted back. Margaret and I spent the next 2 weeks building an airtight case. This wasn't about revenge. It was about protecting my father from financial ruin and emotional manipulation. We need everything documented, Margaret explained, spreading papers across her conference table. The forged signatures from the Eleanor Foster case, the property transfer attempts, the divorce decree, all of it. She'd pulled the court records from Connecticut Superior Court. The evidence was damning. Madeline had attempted to transfer 3 properties worth $3.2 million total. The forensic handwriting expert's report was particularly brutal, deliberate and systematic forgery with intent to defraud. But how do we present this without looking like we're attacking her? I asked. Margaret smiled. We don't attack. We simply appear at the wedding as concerned family. If she makes a scene, which she will, I'll be there as a witness who just happens to have history with her. She'll recognize you immediately. I'm counting on it. Margaret pulled out another document. Emma, there's something else. Madeline never signed a prenuptial agreement with your father. I checked with Harold Morrison before he went on sabbatical. Without a prenup, she'd be entitled to half of everything in a divorce. Or everything if something happened to Dad, James added grimly. We sat with that terrifying possibility for a moment. The wedding is in 5 days, I said, at the Fairmont Hotel. 200 guests. Margaret nodded. I'll prepare a packet for your father, something he can review privately after we expose her. The goal isn't public humiliation, Emma. It's saving your father. What if he doesn't believe us? He will, Margaret said confidently. Because Madeline won't be able to help herself. When cornered, people like her always reveal their true nature. We just need to be there when she does. I wasn't fighting this battle alone. Once James understood the full scope of Madeline's past, he was fully on board. I'll handle Aunt Patricia, he said. She's been suspicious of Madeline from day one. Patricia didn't need convincing. I knew something was off, she said over speakerphone. Last month, Madeline asked me about Robert's first will, the one from when your mother was alive. Why would she need to know about that? Even some of Dad's friends were worried. His golf buddy, Dr. Richard Stern, pulled me aside at the grocery store. Emma, I haven't seen your father in months. Every time we schedule something, it gets canceled last minute. That's not like Robert. It's complicated, Richard. He lowered his voice. Is it the new wife? Because several of us have concerns. I wanted to tell him everything, but Margaret had advised discretion. Just be at the wedding, okay? Dad might need his real friends there. The hardest part was staying calm when I ran into Madeline at the wedding venue during what she thought was a private rehearsal. I'd gone to speak with the venue coordinator, Mom's cousin, who was horrified I hadn't been invited. What are you doing here? Madeline's voice was sharp. Just happened to be in the area, I lied smoothly. She studied me suspiciously. The wedding is tomorrow. Your father and I hope you've accepted our decision about the guest list. Of course, I said, matching her fake smile. I understand completely. You need to control who attends, especially given your history. Her eyes narrowed. What history? Oh, nothing specific. Just, everyone has a past, right? For the first time, I saw uncertainty flicker across her face. Good. Let her wonder what I knew. Margaret would arrive tomorrow as my unexpected guest. The Fairmont Hotel was spectacular. Madeline had spared no expense with Dad's money. White roses everywhere, crystal chandeliers, a string quartet playing Mozart. 200 of Connecticut's elite mingling in their finest attire. I arrived at 2 p.m., 30 minutes before the ceremony, wearing Mom's favorite pearl necklace and a conservative navy dress. Respectable, dignified. Exactly what the daughter of Robert Davis should wear to her father's wedding. Madeline intercepted me at the entrance, flanked by 2 security guards. She wore a $30,000 Vera Wang gown that probably cost more than most people's cars, but her face was twisted with rage. You were uninvited yesterday. Her voice carried across the foyer, causing heads to turn. I received no such communication, I replied calmly. I sent an email, a text. I even left a voicemail. I received nothing. Which was true. She'd sent them after blocking my number. By now, at least 50 guests were watching. I recognized several of Dad's business associates, family friends, cousins from Mom's side who looked shocked to see me being confronted. This is a private event, Madeline announced loudly. Family only. I am family, I said, matching her volume. No, she said, stepping closer. You're a disruption. A toxic presence who refuses to let your father be happy. Gasps rippled through the growing crowd. Someone was recording on their phone. Where's my father? I asked. Getting ready for the happiest day of his life, without you. 200 guests were now witnessing this. Perfect. Security, Madeline commanded. Please escort Miss Davis out. As the guard stepped forward, I remained perfectly still. I'll leave, I said clearly, so everyone could hear. But first, I have someone you should meet. That's when Margaret Smith walked through the door. The security guards reached for my arms, but I didn't resist. The crowd was fully engaged now. Wealthy socialites loved drama more than champagne. She's mentally unstable, Madeline announced to the crowd, playing victim. Robert's daughter has been harassing us for months, unable to accept her father moving on. That's not true, I said calmly. She's jealous, bitter, still grieving her mother inappropriately. Madeline's voice dripped with false sympathy. Robert had to cut contact for his own mental health. My father appeared at the top of the staircase, looking confused. "What's happening?" "Nothing, darling," Madeline called up sweetly. "Emma was just leaving." Dad looked at me, and for a moment, I saw conflict in his eyes. But then Madeline added, "Remember what Dr. Coleman said about toxic family dynamics?" There was no Dr. Coleman. But Dad nodded slowly, the fog returning. "Emma, perhaps it's best if you go." The crowd was whispering now. Poor Robert Davis, dealing with a difficult daughter. Some looked at me with pity, others with judgment. I heard someone whisper, "She should respect his wishes." "You're right," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I'll leave. But first, I have someone you should meet. An old friend of yours, Madeline." "I don't have any friends here," she said dismissively. "No?" I turned toward the door. "Aunt Margaret, would you mind coming in?" Margaret Smith entered with perfect timing, her presence commanding immediate respect. Several guests recognized her. She'd handled their divorces, their estates, their family trusts. The moment Madeline saw her, all color drained from her face. "Hello, Mrs. Foster," Margaret said clearly. "Or should I say, Mrs. Foster Davis now? Though last time we met, you were going by Mrs. Foster Whitman." Madeline's knees buckled. This is the moment everything changed. Have you ever had to stand your ground when everyone was against you? Sometimes staying calm is the most powerful response. If this resonates with you, please share this story with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe, because what happens next is absolutely incredible. Now, watch how one woman's past finally caught up with her. Margaret Smith walked forward with the confidence of someone who'd won 100 cases. Her silver hair was perfectly styled, her black suit impeccable. She carried a leather briefcase that might as well have been a weapon. "Mrs. Foster, we meet again," Margaret said, her voice carrying across the silent ballroom. "5 years is a long time, Madeline." Madeline steadied herself against a pillar, her face cycling through emotions. Shock, fear, then attempted defiance. "I don't know you." "Really?" Margaret smiled. "Because I certainly remember you. Connecticut Superior Court, case number FA 2019-0078432. Foster v. Foster." Dad started walking down the stairs. "What's going on? Who are you?" "Robert, I'm Margaret Smith. I was Catherine's best friend, Emma's godmother. We met many times at your home, though that was before Madeline started reorganizing your life." "This is harassment," Madeline interjected, her voice shaking. "Robert, call security." But Margaret continued, addressing the room now. "I'm also the attorney who represented Eleanor Foster, Madeline's former mother-in-law, in a financial elder abuse case." The crowd gasped. Elder abuse was the kind of scandal that destroyed reputations in Connecticut society. "That's a lie!" Madeline shrieked. "Is it?" Margaret opened her briefcase, pulling out a manila folder. "I have the court documents right here. Forged signatures, fraudulent property transfers, $3 million in attempted theft from a woman with Alzheimer's." "You're confusing me with someone else." Margaret pulled out a photograph. "This is you, isn't it? From the court proceedings? You wore the same Cartier watch you're wearing now." Madeline's hand instinctively went to her wrist. "Shall I continue, or would you prefer to have this conversation privately?" Margaret asked. The room was dead silent. 200 of Connecticut's most influential people were witnessing Madeline's past come back to haunt her. "I represented your ex-husband's mother, remember?" Margaret's voice was steady, professional. "Eleanor Foster, a lovely woman who trusted you to help manage her affairs when her memory started failing." "Stop," Madeline whispered. But Margaret wasn't finished. She pulled out document after document, holding them up for everyone to see. Forensic handwriting analysis confirming forged signatures, bank records showing unauthorized transfers, property deeds with falsified notarizations. Dad had reached the bottom of the stairs, his face pale. Madeline, what is she talking about? It's lies, Robert. She's trying to destroy us. Margaret turned to my father. Mr. Davis, your fiancé was married to Thomas Foster from 2017 to 2019. During that time, she systematically attempted to steal his mother's estate while the elderly woman was suffering from Alzheimer's. That's not... Madeline started. Would you like me to call Thomas? Margaret pulled out her phone. He's waiting in the lobby. He flew in from Boston when he heard you were getting married again. He wanted to warn your husband, Mr. Davis. The crowd was riveted. Several people were openly recording now. The divorce was sealed, Madeline cried out, then realized her mistake. Sealed divorces usually mean something to hide, someone in the crowd murmured. Margaret nodded. Yes, sealed to protect Eleanor's dignity, but the criminal investigation? That's public record. Case number CC 2019-4521. Anyone can look it up. Aunt Patricia stepped forward. Robert, you need to see this. She was holding her phone, showing him something on the screen. The court database. Madeline Foster's name. Criminal fraud investigation. 2 million in stolen assets recovered, Patricia read aloud. Defendant agreed to full restitution to avoid prosecution. Madeline's perfectly composed facade finally cracked completely. But that wasn't even the worst part, Margaret continued, her voice cutting through the ballroom's stunned silence. She pulled out one final document, a medical report. Eleanor Foster died 6 months after discovering the theft. The doctor said the stress of the betrayal accelerated her decline. She died thinking her own son had robbed her, because Madeline had forged his signature too. No, Madeline whimpered. That's not how it happened. Thomas lost his mother and his wife in the same year. He never got to reconcile with Eleanor because she couldn't remember the truth through her dementia. She died believing her son betrayed her. The crowd's whispers turned to angry murmurs. Elder abuse was unforgivable, but this, destroying a family's last moments together, was monstrous. Dad stepped away from Madeline, his face a mask of horror. You did this to someone's mother? Robert, please, it's not what it sounds like. It's exactly what it sounds like, Margaret said firmly. And now she's isolated you from your children, replaced your financial advisors, and according to Emma, is pushing for changes to your will. The same pattern, someone in the crowd said loudly. She's doing it again. Madeline's legs gave out. She collapsed onto the marble floor, her wedding dress pooling around her like spilled milk. But it wasn't a graceful faint. It was the complete collapse of someone whose carefully constructed lies had finally crumbled. Call an ambulance, someone suggested. She's faking, Aunt Patricia said coldly. I've seen her pull this before when confronted about the missing charity funds. What missing charity funds? Dad's voice was dangerous now. The wedding photographer was still taking pictures, documenting every moment. Tomorrow, this would be all over Connecticut society pages. But Margaret wasn't done yet. Dad stood frozen, staring at the documents Margaret had laid out on a nearby table. His hands shook as he picked up the forensic report. This is real? His voice was barely a whisper. Every word, Margaret confirmed. Robert, I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but your children tried to warn you privately. She blocked their access to you. Dad turned to me, his eyes filling with tears. Emma, Oh God, what have I done? It's not your fault, Dad, I said, stepping toward him. Yes, it is. He looked around the ballroom at 200 witnesses to his humiliation. Then, with sudden clarity and strength, he addressed the room. The wedding is canceled, he announced firmly. I apologize to all of you for wasting your time. Madeline struggled to her feet. Robert, you can't. We love each other. Love? Dad's voice cracked. You isolated me from my children. You tried to erase my late wife's memory. You were planning to steal everything my family built. I signed nothing, Madeline protested. We're not married yet. You have no claim on me. Margaret smiled coldly. Actually, about that. Fraud vitiates everything, including engagements. The ring Robert gave you? The joint credit cards? The car in your name? All recoverable assets obtained through fraudulent pretenses. I want you out of my house, Dad said to Madeline. Tonight. You can't just throw me out. I have rights. You have 30 minutes to pack your personal belongings, Margaret interjected. Anything purchased with Robert's money stays. I'll have security escort you. Dad walked over to me and James, pulling us into a tight hug. Emma, James, I'm so sorry. I should have listened. I should have trusted you. The crowd began to disperse, but everyone was talking, phones out, the scandal already spreading. While security escorted Madeline out, Margaret set up an impromptu legal consultation in the hotel's private dining room. Dad, James, Aunt Patricia and I sat around the table as Margaret laid out the immediate steps. First, we freeze all joint accounts, Margaret said efficiently. I've already called Judge Harrison. He's a friend. We'll have an emergency restraining order by tomorrow morning. Can she claim anything? Dad asked, still shaken. She can try, but she won't succeed. No valid marriage, no common law claim, and with the fraud evidence, she's lucky we're not pressing criminal charges. Why aren't we? James asked. We could, Margaret said. But that would mean a long trial, more publicity, more stress for your father. Sometimes the best victory is a clean break. Dad nodded slowly. What about the changes I was making to the will? All changes made under duress or through manipulation are legally void, Margaret assured him. Harold Morrison, your real attorney, never filed anything. He was concerned enough to delay processing despite the pressure. Harold knew? He suspected. That's why he went on sabbatical, to avoid being forced to make changes he knew were wrong. I pulled out my phone, showing Dad the text I'd screenshot. This is what she wrote to someone named Derek about your will. Dad read it, his jaw tightening. Derek is her personal trainer. They seemed very close. We'll investigate that too, Margaret made a note. For now, let's focus on immediate protection. I'm filing paperwork to restore the Catherine Davis Memorial Foundation to its full funding. Mom's foundation, James said softly. Your mother's legacy is safe, Margaret confirmed. And Robert, I strongly suggest therapy. What you've experienced is sophisticated emotional manipulation. It's not weakness to seek help processing it. Dad reached for my hand. Will you help me find someone? Of course, Dad. The wedding that didn't happen became the reunion our family desperately needed. As the vendors cleared away the elaborate decorations, our family gathered in the hotel bar, the same venue, but now for a very different purpose. I can't believe I was so blind, Dad said, nursing a scotch. She was a professional manipulator, Robert, Aunt Patricia said firmly. She knew exactly which buttons to push. James raised his beer. To Emma, who saved Dad from making the biggest mistake of his life. To Margaret, I corrected, who had the evidence to prove it. Margaret smiled. To family that doesn't give up on each other. As we talked, more truth emerged. Dad's golf buddies joined us, admitting they'd been worried for months. Dr. Richard Stern revealed Madeline had tried to convince Dad to skip his annual physical, probably to avoid the psychological evaluation that was standard for executives his age. She knew a psychiatrist would spot the manipulation, Margaret observed. Dad's phone buzzed. He looked at it and laughed bitterly. Madeline. She says she's pregnant. The table went silent. It's a lie, Margaret said calmly. Classic last-ditch manipulation. Demand a medical confirmation from an independent doctor. I guarantee she'll refuse or miscarry conveniently. She was right. Within an hour, Madeline texted that she'd lost the baby due to stress and threatened to sue for emotional damage. Forward everything to me, Margaret instructed. This actually helps our case, shows continued manipulation and false claims. By evening, something beautiful had happened. The failed wedding had become a family celebration. Mom's cousin, who managed the venue, refused to charge Dad for anything. Catherine would haunt me if I did, she said. We ended up using the reception hall anyway for our first real family dinner in months. Within a week, Madeline's house of cards completely collapsed. Margaret's investigation revealed she wasn't just a one-time con artist. This was her pattern. 3 victims in 10 years, Margaret reported at our follow-up meeting. All widowed or divorced men over 50, all wealthy, all isolated from their families within months of meeting her. The news spread through Connecticut's social circles like wildfire. The wedding photographer, it turned out, had captured everything, including Madeline's collapse, and sold the exclusive to the Hartford Courant Society page. The headline read, "Real estate mogul's wedding canceled after bride's criminal past exposed." Madeline tried to salvage her reputation by claiming she was the victim, even starting a GoFundMe for emotional trauma. It raised $12 before being reported as fraud and shut down. But the real justice came from Thomas Foster, her ex-husband. He'd been building a case with other victims for years. With our evidence added, they had enough for a class action lawsuit. She owes restitution to 7 families, Thomas told us over a conference call. Nearly $4 million in total. Madeline's assets were frozen. The luxury apartment she'd been renting with Dad's money? Evicted. The Mercedes Dad had leased for her? Repossessed. The designer wardrobe? Seized as evidence of fraudulent spending. Within 3 weeks, she'd fled Connecticut entirely. The last anyone heard, she was in Florida, working as a receptionist under her maiden name. But even that didn't last. Someone recognized her from the wedding photos that had gone viral in wealthy social circles. "She can't run from the internet," James observed. Dad received letters from 2 other men she'd targeted, thanking him for exposing her. One wrote, "You saved me from proposing. I was 2 weeks away from making your mistake." Dad's journey to healing wasn't instant, but it was profound. He started seeing Dr. Sarah Coleman, a real therapist this time, specializing in manipulation and emotional abuse recovery. "I was the perfect target," he told me after his 3rd session. Wealthy, grieving, lonely, she studied me like a mark. "Dad, you were looking for love. That's not a weakness." "No, but ignoring my children's concerns was." He paused. "Your mother would be ashamed of me." "Mom would understand," I said firmly. "She'd be proud you're getting help." The therapy revealed how sophisticated Madeline's manipulation had been. She'd used techniques called love bombing and isolation, textbook narcissistic abuse patterns. She'd even researched Mom's death, using specific triggers to make Dad feel guilty about moving on too slowly, then too quickly, keeping him off balance. But from this pain came growth. Dad rejoined his golf club, reconnected with old friends, and most importantly, re-established family traditions. Sunday dinners returned. The annual trip to Mom's favorite beach happened again. The Catherine Davis Memorial Foundation not only survived but expanded. "I want to fund a program for elder financial abuse prevention," Dad announced at a board meeting. If Margaret hadn't known about Madeline's history with Eleanor Foster, I'd have lost everything. The program launched 6 months later. Its first seminar drew 200 attendees. Margaret was the keynote speaker. Dad even started dating again, carefully, slowly, with full transparency. He introduced us to Linda, a widow his own age who ran a nonprofit. She insisted on meeting us before accepting a second date with him. "I want to make sure I'm not stepping on any toes," Linda said. "Family comes first." "Anyone who understands that is welcome here," I told her. Dad was learning. We all were. The experience transformed me professionally in ways I never expected. Standing up to Madeline with calm determination, managing crisis under public scrutiny, it all translated into unprecedented confidence at work. "Emma, that presentation was incredible," my CEO said after I'd pitched a controversial new marketing strategy. "You've really found your voice." I had. The Emma who could face down a manipulator in front of 200 people could certainly handle a boardroom. Within 3 months, I was promoted to Senior Director of Marketing. My approach had changed. I no longer avoided conflict or difficult conversations. I addressed problems directly, professionally, with the same calm I'd maintained at the wedding. But the real change was in how I helped others. Word spread about what had happened with Madeline, and suddenly, I was receiving calls from other families dealing with similar situations. My mother is being isolated by her new boyfriend, one woman told me. The same patterns you described. I connected her with Margaret, who took the case pro bono. I started a support group, Families Against Financial Manipulation. We met monthly, sharing resources, warning signs, legal contacts. Margaret became our regular speaker. Dad even attended, sharing his story to help others avoid his mistakes. A year later, I was invited to speak at a conference on elder financial abuse. 300 people attended. When I showed the wedding photos, Madeline, in her designer dress, then collapsed on the floor. The audience gasped. "This is what accountability looks like," I said. "Not revenge, but truth revealed at the right moment, with the right evidence, in front of the right witnesses." My presentation went viral on LinkedIn. I received hundreds of messages from people saying it gave them courage to confront their own family situations. Boundaries, I learned, weren't just personal. They were professional power. The most important lesson from this entire ordeal? Documentation beats emotion every time. Feelings can be dismissed, but facts are undeniable. "You stayed so calm," people often said. How? The truth was, I'd learned that losing control meant losing credibility. Madeline wanted me to explode, to seem like the bitter daughter she'd painted me as. By remaining professional, I let her reveal herself. Margaret and I developed a framework for families facing similar situations. We called it the 3Ps protocol: proof, patience, and public accountability. Proof meant documenting everything: texts, emails, financial changes, behavioral patterns. I'd kept a journal of every interaction with Madeline, every canceled dinner, every blocked call. That journal became evidence. Patience meant not acting on emotion. It took every ounce of restraint not to confront Madeline immediately when I discovered her past. But waiting for the wedding, with all those witnesses, made the revelation impossible to deny or spin. Public accountability meant choosing the right moment for truth to surface, not through gossip or private accusations, but in a setting where denial was impossible and witnesses were plentiful. Sometimes love means standing firm, not giving in, I told the support group. Real love includes boundaries. Dad had these principles framed in his office: trust but verify, love but protect, forgive but remember. The experience also taught me about choosing battles. Not every manipulation deserved a public confrontation. Sometimes quiet legal action was better. Sometimes simply walking away was the answer. But when someone threatened to destroy your family's legacy and steal your father's future, that deserved the full response. "You didn't just save my finances," Dad told me. "You saved my dignity. You showed me I was worth fighting for." That, more than anything, made everything worth it. 2 years later, our family was unrecognizable from those dark months under Madeline's influence. We'd rebuilt stronger, wiser, and more connected than ever before. Dad had sold the house Madeline had tried to redecorate and bought a smaller place closer to James and me. "I don't need a mansion," he said. "I need my family nearby." Sunday dinners were sacred now. No business calls, no excuses, just family. Linda often joined us, but she never tried to replace Mom. She added to our family without subtracting from our memories. The Catherine Davis Memorial Foundation had doubled its reach. We'd added the Eleanor Foster program for elder protection, which had already helped dozens of families identify and stop financial abuse. Thomas Foster served on the board, turning his pain into purpose. "Your mother would be so proud," Margaret told me at the foundation's annual gala. "You didn't just save your father, you've saved countless others." Dad had changed too. He served as an informal counselor for other executives who'd been targeted by manipulators. His story, once a source of shame, became a teaching tool. "Loneliness makes us vulnerable," he'd tell them. "But isolation isn't protection. Connection is." James had started dating someone seriously, and he brought her to meet the family immediately. "I learned from Dad's mistake," he said. "Secrets and isolation are red flags." Even Aunt Patricia had changed, becoming less judgmental and more protective. She'd started what she called Patricia's Network, a group of society women who shared information about suspicious newcomers targeting wealthy widowers. "We're not gossiping," she insisted. "We're protecting." The family that Madeline had tried to destroy had become a fortress of support, not just for each other, but for our entire community. Looking back now, I'm grateful for that horrible day at the Fairmont Hotel. Not for the pain Madeline caused, but for what we discovered in its aftermath, that our family bonds were unbreakable when we stood together. The viral wedding photos still circulate occasionally, usually with headlines like, "Greatest wedding revenge ever." But it wasn't revenge, it was protection. It was love in action. It was a daughter refusing to let her father disappear into manipulation and isolation. Madeline? Last I heard, she was arrested in Arizona for attempting the same scheme with a retired judge. He'd seen our story online and recognized her tactics immediately. She's facing actual jail time now. Turned out Arizona doesn't seal fraud cases like Connecticut sometimes does. But this story isn't really about Madeline. It's about the power of speaking truth at the right moment, with the right proof, in front of the right people. It's about understanding that respect your elders doesn't mean enabling their exploitation. Sometimes, the most respectful thing you can do is stand firm against someone hurting them, even if they can't see it yet. My final advice: document everything. Trust your instincts. Don't let anyone isolate your loved ones. And remember, staying calm and professional in the face of manipulation isn't weakness. It's the ultimate strength. Respect is non-negotiable. Boundaries are essential. And family? Family is worth fighting for, even when they don't realize they need saving. If you've made it this far, you're probably dealing with something similar. You're not alone. You're not crazy. And you're not wrong for protecting the people you love. The truth always surfaces. Sometimes you just need to help it along. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family? What would you have done in my situation? Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you've ever faced family manipulation or had to stand up for your rights, you're not alone. Please share your story in the comments. Your experience might help someone else. Like this video if you believe in the power of truth, and subscribe for more stories about courage, boundaries, and justice. What boundaries have you had to set in your life?